On here now. So guys, welcome inside the grounds of Kilkenny Castle, or as we say in Ireland in the native language, Cathedral, 100,000 welcomes. And we're here right in the heart of the city. So you might have noticed when we came over the River Nore that the castle was more elevated, wasn't it, than the bottom area where we were. And of course this was a purpose-built location. Like all castles, for vantage points, they will be built on a high point of the area, so they can see, of course, panoramic around them for defence. So that was the case in all the castles you'll find across Ireland. So with that, with Kilkenny, before we can really talk about Kilkenny Castle that currently sits here, the castle that was here before was built in wood in the 1170s, and it came about from quite an unusual way in the history of Ireland. Okay, now something in fact that you will never hear in any other scenario except for this one. So with the Irish, during the time period of the 1170s, you had an Irish king asking an English king for assistance. Okay, the only time this ever happened. You had Dermot MacMurrough, who was the king of Leinster in the east of Ireland. So in Ireland we have ancient kingdoms. They're called provinces today. We began from the province of Leinster. We're currently in the province of Leinster, still just on the cusp of the south being Munster. To the west is Connacht, and in the north is Ulster. They correspond to the largest ancient Gaelic kingdoms. Dermot MacMurrough in the 12th century, in the 1170s, he was the king of Leinster. I mentioned the Vikings as we came out of Dublin. The Vikings had set a very strong foothold in Dublin by the 1170s. Of course, they were no longer these raiders, these lunatic warriors anymore, but they were farmers, traders and craftspeople, and they had set a trading route from Dublin across many places around the world. So he had lost control of his main port within his kingdom, or his port within the kingdom. So he set in motion what began, famously known as this 800 years of oppression at the hand of the British Empire. So it all came about from Dermot MacMurrough. He asked the King of England, King Henry II, possibly King Richard II at that time in the 1170s, for assistance. And he said to the King of England at the time, give me an army that I need, and if you banish the Vikings successfully from Dublin, you can have Dublin, it's yours as a gift. It was gone anyway, this was his idea. And if he, through a signed agreement, a charter with the King of England, signed this charter, he would have secured the rest of his kingdom. This was his idea at the time, because with the Vikings, of course, there was no charter that they were going to sign, and there was no agreement he believed that they could come to, and they were going to expand across his entire kingdom. And so, for the King of England, it just so suited him to assist Dermot at the time and give him his army that he looked for. If they were successful, of course, it meant land that he could give to his soldiers around the surrounding area of Dublin City. So, he had his army. Dermot MacMurrough was about 60 years of age at this time, which was a very old age for then, but of course a very young age today. But back then people really didn't live very long, and in their 60s he couldn't have been leading an army, absolutely not. So with that time he went about finding someone to lead the army, a very notable man by the name of Richard Fitzgerald de Clare, very famous more so in relation to cider, Strongbow. Strongbow, you've tried it, yeah? So it's popular cider across Ireland and the UK. It's the same guy. He said to Strongbow, lead the army to succession if you are successful. Of course, land and power was offered to him, and his daughter Aoife's hand in marriage, the beautiful princess of Leinster. She came from nearly 1,000 years of royals and princesses. So of course, famously beautiful as well at the time, he snapped up the opportunity. He led the army. They sailed across the pond, as we say, across the Irish Sea, and they sacked Wexford, which is down at the south of from Dublin. And they sacked Wexford, they made their way northwards towards Dublin, and by the end of 1171 they had successfully banished the Vikings. Now, after all of this effort on Dermot MacMurrough's part, Strongbow shortly after became the King of Leinster, because Dermot died under mysterious circumstances. I'm sure nothing funny happened there. Strongbow became the king, and this was their power base. This was the ancient power base, the ancient capital of Ireland, and this was the power base. Just right here, along where the site is where the wooden structure originally where Strongbow and Aoife did live. The child that was produced from that marriage, a woman called Isabella, married a very powerful man here in the city called William Marshall. And they rebuilt the castle to the way it looks in stone today. Largely the central part is the oldest, and they would have rebuilt that section there. Now they, along the couple themselves, Isabella and William, they rebuilt a lot of the city to the way it looks in stone today. They paid for the commission of the rebuild of the city into stone. So with the central area of the castle, guys, it is the oldest. It's dating to the 1190s. It is one of the oldest surviving castles in the country. So it's among the oldest. We do have as far back as the 1170s, from the very first arrival of the Anglo-Normans and the stonemasons that came with them. So the extensions on either side, they were built on later, and we didn't always have this beautiful view here that you're looking at here. This was laid out later by the Butler family. And the Butler family are mostly associated with the castle. They held the castle for I think it was just over 500 years altogether, the Butler family. So it is mostly associated with them and sometimes called Butler's Castle. They were a French-British family. They were of Norman descent, and they were a very powerful family here all throughout the Middle Ages. So what we're going to do is, actually before I forget to mention, you're going to go to get a perfect photograph, that is, go down into the center of the green here. We'll just take your moment. As you can see, a beautiful central area, and you'll get a photograph of the castle, both extensions, and you'll get the background of the sky in the background as well. Beautiful green field and the entire view of the castle. So make sure that you do take that opportunity. It's a very popular photograph. We're going to head out to the front, guys. For those of you as well that are planning to not visit the castle, this tower here, if you go inside, it gives you a short audio visual of the castle. It gives you the history of the castle in parts and some nice aerial shots of the castle and surrounding areas. And that's free, so you might like to take the opportunity to do that. So if you want to follow me, we'll go to the front entrance where we'll see the family crest of the Butlers. So this way. Kilkenny Castle. Over the entrance door is the family crest of the Butlers, or as it's known in some circles, Butlers Castle. So the family motto of the Butlers, you can see just there. I don't know if you can read it from here. It's French. Ah, beautiful. En français? No. Would you be able to Viking? Viking. Welcome home. Very nice. Would you be able to a bit louder pronounce that for everyone?
Comme le trouver. As you find it.
Wow.
Is it right?
Yeah. Oh my God. Nobody can ever translate that phrase. Are you joking? Where are you from?
Denmark.
Denmark. Come to the tower. Do you speak French fluently? Yeah. Okay, that's a weird one. That's never happened. Well done. And the reason being, guys, it's old French. I'm so impressed. It's an old French from an old region of France in Normandy. Okay, so they were a French family, a British family of Norman descent. So the Normans came to England and conquered England from the Saxons in the Battle of Hastings in 1066. They're descendants of those Normans. They then came here, and though they were a British family, they were one of the most powerful British families here in Ireland that would have been associated with the Protestant ascendancy after British occupation here in Ireland. So very, very powerful. And yeah, it's an old French expression, so it is exactly as this gentleman here said, as we found it. That's the family motto of the Butlers. So very modest family, of course, to claim to sit here or come along here and have a castle sitting here waiting for them. Yes. So that was the Butlers. They're still a very common name across Ireland and the UK today. I'll drop a few names. Have you got any fans of Riverdance? Yes. Okay. So if you are a big fan, Jean Butler. Yes, she was one of Michael Flatley's very best river dancers. She is a descendant of the Butler family and the same family itself, the Butlers. We have Butler's Chocolate, who is the same family. If you haven't tried it, you can get it in here, but you can also get it in any supermarket. Butler's Chocolate. It's outrageous. Make sure you try it, guys. Absolutely delicious. So with the Butler family, they were involved constantly with another family, a power struggle with another family called the Fitzgeralds. These two powerful British families did not get on famously. So they were involved in a great story back in Dublin, actually. So do you remember this morning when I pointed out Christchurch Cathedral and St. Patrick's Cathedral? They were fighting famously, as they always did, right in between the two cathedrals back in the late 1400s, the 1490s. The two families were fighting. The Butlers, very proud family, feeling like they might lose the battle. They couldn't have it. So they fled. And they went down to a building called St. Patrick's Cathedral. So you might have seen it, I pointed it out this morning, or you might have been there already. So with St. Patrick's, there was a chapter house there, which the chapter house itself isn't there anymore, but at the time when they ran down to the cathedral, they ran into the chapter house. They slammed the door behind them, a bit like a movie where they breathed a sigh of relief. Oh, okay, right, we're safe on this side of the door. Now, of course, the Fitzgeralds, they followed them. They wanted to finish the battle. So the head of the Fitzgerald family bangs the door and he says, come on, come out and we'll finish what we started. They said, no, you're grand, we're safe here on the other side. The head of the Fitzgerald family, believe it or not, Gerald Fitzgerald was his name, he ordered a hole to be cut through the door in the chapter house, and he literally placed his own arm through, risking his own arm being sliced off with a sword. He placed his arm through, risking the arm being sliced off, but luckily for him, his hand was shaken by the head of the family, and peace was made. On that particular day, peace was made. And it's from that event that we get a great turn of phrase in Ireland. We love a good story, and especially when we get a good anecdote or phrase produced from it. You'll hear, if you have any Irish friends, we often say, chancing your arm. Has anybody ever heard of that? Yes. Chancing your arm. It comes from these two families, from that very story, where Gerald literally chanced his own arm as he placed it through the door. Now, the chapter house isn't there anymore, but if you go to the cathedral, at the end of the cathedral, there's a big dramatic suspended door, and today it's called the Door of Reconciliation. It is the door from the very chapter house of that story. You might like to go and see it, and it's the same family. So if you get a guided tour, you'll hear more about them there. So what we'll do is we'll head down here to the Medieval Mile. I'll tell you about Kittler's Inn, and I'll give you guys directions then from there. And if you have happening right after the success of King William of Orange in 1690. So that's why this is so sad. 1690 onwards. So the tussle, the word, is an Old English word for essentially what would have been a tax office and a customs house. The tussle. So today it houses the Medieval Museum of Kilkenny. It's about €5 admission, so if you would like to visit, it's quite cool. It has all medieval history in reference to Kilkenny specifically. So the museum, the Medieval Museum. Now with the Castle building, originally it was here since the 1400s, largely destroyed by fire and rebuilt then in the 1700s. And it's an 18th century building that you're looking at here. Now really what the building is quite known for and famous for is an event that took place within the pillars of the Castle building. So there's a woman here that was born by the name Alice Kittler, Dame Alice Kittler. She was born in a house around the corner, which is now Kittler's Inn. It's a pub restaurant. That's where she was born. She was born into a very wealthy family, an Anglo-Norman descent family, very wealthy British family. And she married the Dame as a young woman, her first husband. Her first husband was in perfect health at the time of their marriage, but his health very quickly deteriorated. Very strange ailments. So his fingernails and toenails fell off, all of his hair fell from his head, and he died only months into the marriage. She was absolutely heartbroken. Of course, she became a little bit wealthier again after his death. She didn't remarry, she didn't spend too long before she remarried, rather, which wouldn't have been terribly unusual in the Middle Ages for a woman in the Middle Ages to be without a husband in the household. So she did remarry quite quickly afterwards. Strangely though, her second husband suffered from the very same ailments that her first husband suffered from as well. He became very sick. His fingernails and his toenails fell out, and his hair fell out. He also died months into the marriage. She, absolutely heartbroken, very unlucky for her a second time, but she did become a little bit wealthier again after his death. She did remarry a third time. At this stage, some eyebrows were being raised around the city. People were talking. She could have been possibly a gold digger. She could have been involved in some funny business where she might have been involved in her husband's death. There was no proof, except then, of course, her third husband also died. And at this stage, people started to think that maybe she might have been involved. The very same ailments as well. Her third husband died of. He was poisoned, it seemed. Now at this stage, she did remarry a fourth time fairly quickly after her third husband's death. I think you know what I'm going to say. The Dame Alice Kittler married a man called Sir John Power. So this was at the turn of the 14th century. And John knew all about this woman. People were talking. But when he laid eyes on her, it was as if he was spellbound, you might say. He fell head over heels madly in love with this woman. And he knew the danger involved, but he thought it was just women talking. They were just jealous. She was terribly unlucky. That must be what it was. So they married. And again, weeks into the marriage, he became very sick. And strangely, just weeks before his death, he completely changed his will to the benefit of the Dame Alice Kittler and the Dame alone, none of his family whom he was very close with. Now when he died, again of course of the same ailments, the family went to the Archbishop here in Kilkenny and they pleaded their case. People were coming forward at this stage and there was mounting evidence against the Dame that she was concocting potions and that she was off in the mountains in the night, not a shred of clothing to be found on her body, speaking a strange language nobody had ever heard of. So at this stage, the Archbishop decided there was enough evidence to charge her with, of course, witchcraft. So at this stage, when that happened, she was a smart lady. When she was accused, she never stood trial, she fled to London. Unfortunately, one of her servants was captured, and apparently a very close friend of hers by the name of Petronella. So she was captured, she was questioned, and she confessed to witchcraft. Today it's said that we don't really know how reliable her confession would have been. She was probably tortured and coerced into a confession. If she didn't confess though, there was ways to find out if you were in fact a witch. You had ropes and rocks tied to your feet as you were thrown into the local river. So in this case, the River Nore behind these buildings. And if you were a witch, regardless of all this extra weight on your body, you would still float on top of the water. So if that happened and you floated, you were fished out and you were burned at the stake. If you were innocent, you drowned. So there was no good way of getting out of it. She did confess. And therefore, she was taken right inside the pillars of this very building here. She was tied to the stake, and in the early 14th century, she was burned alive as a witch. Now, historically, this was the first burning of the stake that took place in the entire European Union at that time, the turn of the 14th century. Now, if you would like to see where the Dame Alice Kittler was born, it's now a pub restaurant. So you can go in, there's some paintings of her, there's some information about her on the walls, and it's down the lovely Butter Slip here. So this is the Butter Slip, guys, and if you might notice, if you want to come ahead a small bit here, you can see the first restaurant on your right is Petronella's. It's named after the poor woman that was burned at the stake. It's a beautiful, cute little restaurant cafe, and it's nice if you want to go have a look inside or to eat there, you can. It's quite nice. If you walk down, you'll see it just keeps on giving. It's beautiful, medieval, it's very charming. It's the best preserved medieval slipway, at least one of them in Ireland. So as you walk through, beautiful photographs, you'll get down to the end of the Butter Slip, take a left, and Kittler's Inn is up on the right. Even for an Irish coffee, they do beautiful Irish coffees, or you might like to sit down there and have lunch. So with the Butter Slip, guys, it gets its name because this is where the merchants would have sold butter in the shade. That's how it gets the name, the Butter Slip. So Kittler's Inn is down here, guys. Kilkenny Castle and the Kilkenny Design Centre Cafe is up this way, and the bus is straight up this way. You don't turn, you don't go anywhere. Right up to the top is Castle Road.